Let us pray together. God of mercy and grace, as we gather today, we want to thank you for this opportunity to be with one another and with you. The psalm tells us that it is good and pleasant when your people live together in unity and harmony. And for this we give thanks because we've seen it here today on our campus. We ask that you bless our time together as we celebrate the homecoming and reunions of the classes of 1970, 1971, and 1972. We thank you for our students who are in the process of discovering what matters and building their lives around it towards great futures full of promise. We thank you for faculty and staff who have dedicated themselves to the growth and development of the students in their care. We thank you for our administration and trustees who work diligently to lead Aurora University. Grant them wisdom as they face the challenges of the day. Bless those who will be honored here today and later this weekend. We thank you for all that they have done for the common good. May you continue to guide and direct us as we serve you by serving one another. For all these blessings we give thanks, and it is in your holy name that we pray. Amen.
We've been waiting for this since 2019. It's so great to have everybody back for homecoming weekend, for the Founders Convocation that begins our time together. I look forward to a weekend packed with sunshine, friendship, a huge Spartan victory, Coach, and lots of good food and fellowship. You know, so often we're in these settings, and I have the honor of introducing our board chair. I'd like to do it a little differently this time. Many of you know Chris Johns. She is the daughter of one Aurora College alum and board member, and the mother of an AU graduate and alum. Chris is an accomplished business person and the second woman to chair the Board of Trustees. But above all else, she's an artist. She is an artist whose work is exhibited not only in the United States, but abroad. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the chair of the Board of Trustees, Chris Johns.
Good afternoon. On this occasion, we reflect upon the people whose vision, leadership, and hard work gave rise to this university, in which we take pride and to which we now devote our own energy. We reflect upon the purposes and values that abide as a common link connecting the members of this community across decades and centuries. So today, we celebrate individual accomplishment, and yet we are reminded that we are connected and dependent on one another. Each of us are a link in a chain that binds us to the past and to the future. And we also reflect upon our history today, which expresses our commitment to honor the past, not from a desire to remain frozen in time, but rather as a source of inspiration to direct our own efforts for the benefit of those who will follow us in the decades and centuries to come. Recognizing alumni is among the most important traditions at Aurora University. Our alumni are vital to our continued growth. Therefore, we look to our alumni to continue to represent the university and to support and promote our efforts for the future. To those alumni who are here to celebrate their reunions and enjoy this homecoming weekend, welcome. The changes you will see on campus since you were a student are obvious and so very impressive. But what you cannot see, but I know you understand, and is equally impressive, is the dedication, the commitment, and the sacrifices that faculty, donors, alumni, administrators, and trustees have made to positively grow the university and affect the lives of thousands of students. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of Aurora University, I wish to thank our alumni, our faculty and staff and administrators that have demonstrated extraordinary dedication to our students and to our mission. Aurora University prospers through your sacrifice and hard work. Welcome to Homecoming Weekend.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Cannon. As a trustee, as an alum, as someone who played for Coach Jim Schmid on the baseball team, it is a true honor to be asked to speak here today as we dedicate the baseball field at the Stewart Sports Complex in Coach Schmid's name. While these gowns look good on all of you, I have to admit this is not usually what you wear to dedicate a baseball field. And so, to add a little baseball feel, I brought a hat with me. This hat's 30 years old, by the way, and it's not the oldest thing I have in my closet. I got t-shirts calling this hat Junior, but I'm gonna leave that there. That hat happens to be from the 1992 season, a World Series season, and also Coach Schmid's last season coaching at Aurora University. I would wear it, but it shrunk. Either that or I got fatter. We're going with it shrunk. So, Coach Schmid coached the baseball team from 1983 to 1992. He had an overall record of 245 wins, 122 losses, and 2 ties. For those of you who are not math majors, that means Coach Schmid teams won way more games than they lost. In fact, double plus 1. I did the math ahead of time. In any event, Coach Schmid was not only a great coach, but he was and is a great person. He treats people the way he would want to be treated and serves as a good example to everyone. For those of you who don't know Coach Schmid, I will tell you that my time spent with him in 1991 and 1992 is a time that I would describe him as someone who was just pure energy. He walked fast everywhere. He talked fast all the time. The man was a talker. Didn't matter how long the road trip was, he was gonna be talking. And he'd be talking about baseball, he'd be talking about your family, he'd be talking about your family and baseball, and then we're baseball and family, and then we're all back to it again. I mean, he could talk. They didn't have podcasts back then, but if they did, Jim Schmid would have a podcast. But one of the phrases that we would hear often from Jim Schmid was, "Come on, you." And it could be a pick-me-up or a reprimand. Same phrase, different meanings, and you always knew. Come on, you. Coach Schmid is also a good family man. It's my understanding Coach Schmid and his wife are celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. Congratulations on that. That means that his wife has heard 80 years of stories. After I was done playing, I had an opportunity to coach quite a bit myself. I had a mantra with the players who I coached that the only 2 things you ever control every time you play is how much you hustle and how much you care. The key to success is understanding what goes into all of those things and the dedication that goes into all those things. Jim Schmid was the personification of those things. He personified the qualities that you want in the way that he treated players, students, and their families over the years. He would believe in you even if you didn't believe in yourself. And it turns out when you combine all that winning with that kind of a person, they start naming fields after you. This isn't the first field named after the guy. I think he's in 4 Hall of Fames, and it's good stuff, good stuff. I was asked to share a story that I thought illustrated why we are naming a field after Jim Schmid. I could talk about all the conference championships, the regional championships, the World Series appearances, the Coach of the Year awards, the fact that he's already in the Hall of Fame here. But I think the true measure of a person gets reflected when something doesn't go well. So I'm going to talk about what at the time and may still be the worst loss in the history of Aurora University baseball. Unfortunately, that is on both Coach Schmid and my resume, because I was there. Due to time constraints And by the way, I don't know why you give an Irish storyteller an open mic in a captive audience and then put a time constraint on what I'm going to be able to say. I'm going to give the short version of this story and the family-friendly version as well. The loss happened in the regional tournament back in 1992. I was lucky enough to be the guy who scored the first run of that game. We went up 1-0. We then proceeded to lose that game 22-1 to William Penn. You heard that correctly, 22-1. Again, for those of you who are not math majors, that is a big discrepancy in the score. However, if you want to know what it was like to be a part of the program that Jim Schmid built and the players that he helped along the way, you just needed to be around when one of the William Penn players stole second base on us when the score was 18-1, breaking one of the unwritten rules of baseball. It's usually the unwritten rules that give rise to most conflict, by the way. Again, because this is a family show, I will give you the clean, short version of the reaction of our team. Let's just say as a group it didn't sit well. I could tell a lot of stories about what happened next, but I will move on to, in the postgame, the normally very talkative Coach Schmid didn't say much because he didn't have to. When great coaches build great programs with players who mirror what that coach stands for, words didn't need to be said. All the things that mattered were already built in: pride, integrity, respect, decency, hard work, hustle, physical and mental toughness, togetherness, inner strength to succeed, family and the strength of family. You know all the things that can make you successful on the field, but even more successful off of it. As a group, there was no question that we would beat William Penn every time we laid our eyes on them the rest of the weekend. And it didn't matter which one of us played or didn't play, this was gonna happen. And it did. We beat them 2 times that weekend to win the regional title and advance on to the College World Series in 1992. Again, because this is a family show, I will simply describe those games as a little testy, as our 5-foot-something coach stood awfully tall in the face of the opposing coach who was 6'3" and 200 and something. He would have pointed in his face, but he would have needed a chair to get up there, but he... Unfortunately, by the way, when I say the man was pure energy, I'm not kidding. It was a daily thing, it was an hourly thing, and it was awesome. Unfortunately, we lost our World Series games and were eliminated, but it was the post-game talk after elimination that I vividly remember Coach Schmid giving. While I know there would have been positives, because Coach Schmid was the most positive coach I ever played for, his message to his young team, there were only 2 senior starters on that World Series team, that we definitely overachieved in 1992, but his message was clear to us. No matter what we had just accomplished, we needed to be mentally and physically tougher, period. Every one of us took that to heart as we moved forward, not only in baseball, but in life, and he was right. And here's the thing. The worst loss in AU baseball history, the great tournament comeback to go to the World Series, to be at the World Series, and then having Coach Schmid coach us even harder after elimination than he did before, that all happened in like 1 week. All the weeks were like that with Jim Schmid. But in this instance, it happened to be his last week as the coach at Aurora University. He left so he could go coach his son, which I think is awesome. The way he coached, the way he treated his players, the example he set for all of us on and off the field, there's no question that he impacted in a positive way thousands of people over the years. So I want to close with this. There have been different times, including times I've come back to the university, where I've been asked what it was like to play for Coach Schmid. What was it that led to the success? The easy answer is that he was a good person, a good coach, a knowledgeable coach. He recruited good players, players who reflected the values you'd want on and off the field, or players he knew he could reach to maximize their abilities so that they could be better people on and off the field. But there's one ingredient in the recipe of success that was so obvious to me, and I think for anybody who played for him, and that was this: Coach Schmid loved his players more than we could love them back. That's why you name it a field after somebody. I love you, buddy. Come on up here.
Thank you, thank you. Man, I didn't know you were so funny. That was always good for the team. He was a heck of a player, and he always helped our GPA too. That was important. Just a few words, if you don't mind. I used to have a lot more energy. I fighting Parkinson's a little bit, so excuse my voice. But Aurora University is an incredible place. I was 82 to 92, and I come back now, and I can't believe what it even looks like, what it feels like. It's just amazing. I just, from a distance, I was a principal at Mattia and at Wabanzi Valley, so I kept track of it pretty closely, and it's just amazing what President Sherrick and your staff have been able to accomplish. I think it's just unbelievable, and I'm so thankful to see it from a distance and appreciate it up close. I want to make sure, my wife's not here. We're headed out for our 40th to New Buffalo right after this, so we're going to cut out of here. Sorry about that, but that should be a good time. I want to make sure that I thank mostly the players. You know, coaches do the best they can. Coaches work hard, and coaches try to recruit the best kids they can. But it's really up to the players. I had great players. I had kids like Matt Cannon. Excuse me, sorry. We were kind of lucky. I was 28 years old, and Tim DeRozan took a chance on me, quite frankly. You know, he talked fast. I hoped for luck and tried to get good players, and that was how it worked. But I want to thank Mark Walsh for sure, and Mark was a huge piece of what we did together. He's being inducted into the Hall of Fame later on this evening, and I want to make sure that I recognize the coaches and again, the players who are really at the heart of this whole thing. So, Coach Stevens, with your staff, and the great job that you've done. Sean, the great job that you did when you were head coach. Just quite a legacy, and we're very fortunate. So, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to learn from you in the audience and to learn from all the players that I had, and just, I'm so thankful for being a part of Aurora University.
Since early times, from the biblical to the Middle Ages, the Renaissance and modern times, communities have been brought together through common sounds. From the great European cities to the public squares in New England, there are church and other bell towers that peal in celebration or solemnly in sorrow. We witnessed this earlier this month with the bells at Westminster Abbey during Queen Elizabeth's funeral. Towers and bells, symbols that help create community. That is what members of the class of 1969 had in mind when they declared their 50th reunion class gift to the university, the Spirit Bell Tower at Spartan Athletic Park. Recalling their own sense of community as students in the late 1960s, class members realized that through shared traditions and common experiences, they were united. In good times and in bad, students came together at Eckert Hall, drawn by the sounds of the carillon. Class of 1969 members wanted Spartan Athletic Park also to have its own unifying element, whether announcing a team meeting or a victory, or calling students together for a moment of silence. A bell tower at Spartan Athletic Park would symbolize a shared tradition. On the occasion of their 50th reunion in 2019, the class achieved their fundraising goal and construction began on the bell tower. Two important aspects of the bell tower deserve mention. First, because the Spirit Bell Tower serves as a unifying symbol for the campus community, the plaque at the base of the tower states, "Given by members of the class of 1969." No individual name is listed. Community is collective. Each individual is part of something greater than him or herself. The second aspect about the Spirit Bell Tower is the scripture that the class chose for the plaque. "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." These words, spoken by the Apostle Paul, are taken from chapter 4 of 2 Timothy. Paul speaks these words just before his martyrdom in 67 AD to a younger man named Timothy, who had been his protege. Paul reminds Timothy, and all who hear his words, that keeping faith matters above all else. Doing your very best in each aspect of life matters too. Paul never wavered in his faith and was a fervent warrior throughout his life. He wanted Timothy to follow in his footsteps. This is the message that members of the class of 1969 want to share with current and future students. Never give up. Keep the faith in yourself, in others, and in your relationship with God. As university chaplain and as an alumnus, I am honored to be able to help dedicate the Spirit Bell Tower for members of the class of 1969. I look forward to hearing the bell rung before athletic events and especially after a victory. Most of all, I look forward to seeing students gathered together at the bell tower in unity, sharing fellowship and community. To members of the class of 1969, thank you.
The daughter of Irish immigrants who settled in Connecticut, Betty Park Tucker understood that differences could lead to disagreement and discouragement. Her parents left their native land in search of religious freedom, and this family history shaped Betty's life work with her students. While pursuing her education at then Aurora College, following her brother David Park, who was already enrolled, Betty met the love of her life, fellow classmate Don Tucker, one of the 4 Tucker brothers who had come from Ohio to Aurora College. It was at Engagement Rock, which sits in front of Eckerd Hall, that Don proposed to Betty. After earning her degree in elementary education, and after Don completed his Aurora education, his service in the Marine Corps, and law school at Yale University, they established their home in Ohio. Betty continued her education there, earning a master's degree from Youngstown State University and then a doctorate from Kent State University. She was working as a licensed school psychologist, where she was in the forefront of creating and organizing innovative programs to further improve the lives of students with whom she worked. At one middle school, Betty's work emphasized assessment, diagnostics, and intervention for children with special needs. At another school, Betty developed tutoring services for young girls where she engaged peer volunteers, which was the first program of its kind in the area. Betty was also heavily involved in community organizations. She served as a board member for the Youngstown Child and Adult Mental Health Association. For more than 4 decades, she worked tirelessly to ensure that every student had pathways to reach their potential and then the encouragement to go further. She was devoted, you might even say outspoken, to opening doors to those who might not have opportunities she saw as essential to our society. Recognizing Betty's lifelong commitment to education and the breadth and depth of her service to school children, as well as Don's own professional achievements, Aurora University in 2011 awarded them with an honorary doctorate of humane letters. Betty died early in 2021 at the age of 90. 6 months after her death, Don, who always remembered how his Aurora education had shaped his and Betty's lives, called to discuss honoring Betty with a gift to the university. AU's Pathways program, which supports college-capable students with autism achieve their academic success and prepare for a career, aligned so much with Betty's life work and values that Don made a significant investment in the program in her memory. Today, we too honor Betty by dedicating the Betty Park Tucker Center for Neurodiversity at Aurora University. Housed in West Hall, the center offers program space where Pathways students can study and learn together and contribute in meaningful ways to the campus, community, eventually to their profession, and to being community members. President Sherrick, members of the Board of Trustees, and alumni, I am honored to share the story of one of the university's most dedicated alumni and to help dedicate this important space for our students.
To the
It's so exciting to know that the choir will be taking their long-deferred trip to Ireland this year. You know, you can never have too many historians at an event. A convocation without multiple historians is, well, what's the point? When we thought about today's program, we thought it was a chance to go back into our history with the person who knows absolutely the most about it. One of the things I'm most happy about at AU is all the wonderful histories we've written. We have now 2 histories of George Williams. Susan Palmer's history of the early years at Mendota have been really instrumental for many of us in helping us understand our origins. And now she's partway through a 2nd history. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Susan. She's an emeritus member of the faculty. She's continues to be heavily involved in the Jenks collection and the archives. She was herself a Spartan Award winner, and she's here to talk with us today a little bit about the AU, Aurora College story.
Good afternoon. When President Sherrick asked me to give a talk at this year's convocation, she specifically asked me to discuss the lessons I have learned from my research on the book I'm currently writing, this one on the early decades of Aurora College. As I thought about this, I quickly realized that I could not start at 1912. Hey, I'm an historian, keep going back. The year we arrived in Aurora, that the lessons I saw came from a continuum, starting at Mendota and going up to at least the immediate post-World War II years. I will have to do a somewhat superficial job of this because my research is incomplete, and I have been told by Terry and my husband that I get the hook if I go beyond my allotted time. But stay tuned for the publication of my 2nd book, and all will be revealed. The college, of course, evolved over the years since its founding in 1893 by Advent Christians. Although the school, by today's standards, was still small in 1950, around 390 students that fall. Its student body had grown substantially since 1893, and the school was becoming more diverse. It was no longer, strictly speaking, an Advent Christian college, although it still viewed itself as a Christian one. That is because the economic conditions of the 30s prevented many Advent Christians around the country from coming to Aurora, while Aurora's young people stayed close to home for the same reason and turned to their local college. And the board of directors acquired its first non-Advent Christian member, a local judge, in 1935. This growth in the number of Aurorans in the college community led, in the 30s, to the college initiating the first community fundraising campaign ever held in Aurora. Never again would the college depend almost totally on the small Advent Christian denomination to support it. However, in spite of the many changes, the connective tissue between Mendota College and Aurora College was still there. Both institutions went through crises that threatened their very existence, and they survived them for some similar reasons. The year of the school's founding, 1893, is important in our nation's history, not just AU's, because this was the year that the worst depression to date descended on the country. This was an inauspicious time to be founding a college. Plus, the school in its infancy was fragile and inexperienced, improvising and making mistakes along the way. Not surprisingly, just 4 years later, in 1897, the final year of this depression, the school came very close to folding. Aurora College experienced crises that were every bit as threatening to its survival, but were more national in scope, especially the Great Depression. And I might add World War II as well, which I didn't have time to get into, but when half of your student population and then some leave, you've got problems. 1931 and 32 were the years that the school and the nation hit rock bottom economically. Longtime Aurora College treasurer, Orrin Singletary, who was in that position in the 30s, told me concerning the college that the Depression, quote, almost snuffed it out. How did this small, financially fragile college survive so many trials? One critical factor was strong leadership at the right times. By the financial crisis years of 96, 97, Mendota College had had a series of ineffective short-term presidents. However, it had a board composed of strong leaders who were not willing to admit defeat in spite of the heavy odds against the school's survival. At an 1897 meeting, after discussing the dire financial situation, board members decided to fight for the school, voting that, quote, in the name of the Lord, we maintain the college. The wording suggests that they saw themselves as making a sacred pledge, that it was their responsibility to God to make the tough decisions to keep the college going. They made those difficult decisions and managed to pull the college back from the edge. There would be more crises at Mendota, but that was the closest they came to closing. At Mendota, presidential leadership grew stronger as the years went by, culminating with Orrin Road Jenks, the major transitional figure between the two colleges. Jenks was among those who came to believe that for the college to survive, drastic action had to be taken, or the school would die. The college needed to take the radical step of leaving Mendota to relocate in a larger, more vibrant town. He determined that this town was Aurora. When a movement arose to move to Zion City, today we call it Zion, instead, he fought tooth and nail for Aurora. As it turned out, he was right about Zion City's problems and helped others to see that. When Aurora was chosen as the college's new location, he literally put his personal and professional life on hold for 2 years. While as chair of the fundraising committee for the new campus, he barnstormed around the country raising money for it. He preached at churches and camp meetings and wrote articles for denominational newspapers as well as persuasive letters to individual Advent Christians. He sweet-talked, argued, chastised, charmed, and used his considerable political talents. In short, he employed every tactic and talent he could to do what seemed to be the impossible, raise enough money to build a new campus, which, by the way, was more money than had ever been raised for an Advent Christian cause. Once in Aurora, now as president, he worked nonstop to help the still financially fragile college put down roots in its new location. Aside from his regular duties, he worked at two major things over the next 20 years. Building up the endowment, which would later help the school to survive in the 30s, and getting the college its first certification. This was increasingly necessary to prevent students from transferring to schools that were certified. But it was also expensive to accomplish because many improvements had to be made to secure this. All the while, the school's debts were growing and growing. Not acquiring certification in this modernizing age endangered the school's survival, but so did the growing debt. The perfect storm was taking shape. The Depression hit hard just as President Jenks's career was winding down. He had been president for 20 years, was in his 60s, and was, frankly, tired. In 1932, in response to the crisis, the administration was restructured and Theodore P. Stevens was made vice president. The board then transferred the difficult job of overseeing the college's terrible finances from Jenks to him. When Stevens officially became the college's president the next year, January 33, he was able to hit the ground running since he had essentially been acting president since the previous year. He had even already tried several things to improve the school's financial position. When they had done little to help, he was ready to try some new strategies by the time he became president. When President Stevens died, one eulogist, allergies. One eulogist, speaking of those early Depression years, said, quote, that his management of the college during those first difficult years can only be characterized as audacious, navigating financial shoals so hazardous that both he and the businessmen with whom he dealt recognized that the college had no right to be in business. He nevertheless managed to meet critical obligations. As important as bold leadership is, it is not enough. The people being led have to be on board with the leadership's bold plans, and this requires a sense of mission and of community. When necessary, they need to be willing to sacrifice for the larger good. In the college's times of crisis, no group did more of that than the faculty, especially when it came to their meager pay. And I do mean meager. At Mendota College, it appears that paying the faculty was often one of the last financial obligations taken care of in hard times. In the crisis of 96-97, fundraisers said that the college needed $700 for current operating expenses, money needed mainly for faculty salaries. A few months later, there was the fundraising plea that, quote, our teachers must have their pay on or before the end of the school year. Comments about faculty needing to be paid as a school year or even a term was ending were especially common, leaving one to wonder just how regularly the faculty were paid. Paying faculty on time was an issue right up to the end of the Mendota era. In May 1912, just 1 month after the college had moved here, President Jenks noted that fundraising for operating expenses had suffered during the fundraising campaign for the Aurora campus. The result, he stated, is that there is not a dollar in our treasury with which to meet the salaries of our teachers for the 2 months closing out our school year. And several times, faculty sacrificed their own pay to help the school. During the 97 crisis, a fundraiser wrote that, quote, the expenses of the college for the coming year have been reduced about $1,600, and this was caused by the instructors of our school giving the college this amount out of their wages. Pretty small faculty then, and their wages were pretty meager. I don't even know where that $600 came from. Given how low faculty salaries were to start with, This was a remarkable sacrifice on their part. College leaders promised that faculty would eventually be paid. No doubt they were, but in the meantime, they had to make do somehow. Faculty sacrificed in a similar way during the Great Depression. In the spring of '31, after admitting that faculty salaries were, quote, extremely low, the dean proposed that a plan be devised to increase them over time. However, it's the Depression years. Less than 10 months later, the opposite happened. Jenks reported to the board that the faculty had voluntarily gifted to the college 10% of their salaries for the current semester. The board then thanked them for, quote, this very gracious act of loyalty and sacrifice. Clearly, this was a mission-driven institution. No doubt there were disagreements and tensions among the administration and faculty during these times of crisis, but many of them stayed and served, be it board members and presidents who had to make tough decisions and take bold actions in periods of crisis, or faculty who in normal times had to deal with low pay and in hard times often sacrificed even part of that while taking on heavier workloads. In the end, though, they shared a mission that guided them and saw them through to better times. And that is something we all can be grateful for and celebrate today. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that those of you in the first few rows, I did not put her up to that salary stuff. It is, in fact, the case that when you study the history of AU, Aurora College, Mendota Seminary, you're really moved by the fact that a mission, an ideal, carried people forward. Through some of the most cataclysmic, really, world events we can imagine. The events of the 20th century were dramatic and devastating for a small university, just as some of the challenges we face today can be overwhelming. It is the power of those ideas, that belief that learning makes a difference in the lives of those who learn, and in turn, in the lives of those of us who teach and serve. It is a remarkably noble story, and one that we can hold hard to today. It's also one that we share with our students. And so today, I'm so happy that we finally can celebrate with the early 70s classes. We've been looking forward to you, and we've been looking forward to this time that we would share together. You'll be happy to know that we ditched the mortarboards, and you don't have to wear those. Instead, we thought you might like a medallion instead, and so you don't have to worry about those awkward hats where you're the only ones in the room wearing them, and the rest of us are glad we're not wearing ours. The 1970s were another testing time, weren't they? It's a hinge. It's a hinge between the drama and the distrust and the tumult of the 1960s and the 1980s that would follow. And in the 1970s, Aurora College did some of its very best work. It was a period when there was a remarkably gifted and urbane faculty, and a group of students who were willing to push hard, not just to learn, but to have an impact on one another, an impact on society, and it is indeed a group that went on to impact those around them in many, many ways. These early 70s classes are among the most distinguished in our long story. And so it's appropriate that as they contemplate a class gift, they're thinking of helping all of us develop the learning commons that will take our students out of their cars. If you could be here on most days and you walked across an AU parking lot, you would discover that a great many of our students spend the lunch hour sitting in their cars, studying, reading, catching up. One of my dreams for the Learning Commons is we get them out of their cars and into community with one another. That is so important, that we create that intersection between learning and growing and community. And that's what this new facility can be for us. And so we are incredibly grateful that you are going to lead the first charge into the new Learning Commons, and all of the rest of us look forward to following you with enthusiasm and excitement to know that we will have not only finally a state-of-the-art library, but a place where our students, the faculty, the staff, the community can gather for the true communion that sets a place like AU apart. So welcome and thank you for your patience and for traveling to the campus for this homecoming weekend. I promise, beautiful weather.
Good afternoon. Each fall, the university community is renewed again through the arrival of a new freshman class. As students arrive, grow, and then graduate, the faculty and staff remain constant. Throughout its history, Aurora University has benefited from the extraordinary dedication and leadership of the women and men who make the campus their work homes, as we just heard from our history. One of the hallmarks of this Founders Convocation is a recognition of the AU faculty and staff who perpetuate the rich tradition of service that reaches back into our early years at Mendota. Today, we recognize employees with 5 or more years of service at Aurora University. The following full-time faculty and staff have served the AU community for 5 or more years. At the conclusion of the convocation, we ask those celebrating this anniversary to please pick up your awards from the reception desk outside. Please stand now as I read your names and continue standing until all names are read, when we can then all applaud your achievements. Jennifer Davis, Becca Flaminio, Kimberly Fowler, John Harbeck, Ashley Harris, Sarah Herring, Alex Hinton, Meg Howes, Karen Jakelski, Tyler Jones, Sam Kruger, Caleb Lewis, Deb Maui, Kirby Mickelson, Mark Peterson, Daniel Pleckham, Clint Rhodes, Sharon Saletti, Shannon Sitch, Lori Steiner, Alyssa Struck, Emily Telford, Maria Valenciano, Julianne Vickers, Christina Young Winders, and Scott Zinzer. Congratulations to you all. Next, we will recognize members of the faculty and staff with 10 years of service. Again, once I call your names, please stand and remain standing until all the names are read. William Andrews, Jennifer Everhart, Ashley Hacker, Jim Hammond, Kate Herrick, Sarah Johnson, Sharon Maxwell, Sarah Mears, James Seidelman, Kendra Trudeau, and Lisa Waters. Congratulations. And now, you guessed it, employees with 15 years of service to Aurora University include the following. Once again, stand when your name is read. Brenda Barnwell, Libby Escovedo, Andrew Heitzman, Hurstel Howard, Tony Kubasek, Chris Miller, David Rudek, and Stephanie Whitus. Congratulations. And we keep going. Employees with 20 years of service to Aurora University include the following, and once again, please stand when I read your name. Faith Augustinoni Wilson, Chris Johnson, Brian Kipley. Congratulations. And now it's time to celebrate our colleagues with 25 years of service to Aurora University. And for these colleagues, we would ask that you come to the stage when your name is read and you will receive a gift. So please come forward, Jane Davis, Bob McDermott, and Sean Neitzel. Congratulations. Now we have one colleague with 45 years of service to the university, Tom Bindrom. Tom, unfortunately, is unable to be with us today, but please join me in congratulating him. I'd also like to thank and recognize all of our faculty and staff who have served Aurora University throughout the years. Now, will all who are able, please stand as the University Chorale leads us in singing the Alma Mater. Please remain standing for the benediction. At the conclusion of the prayer, I invite the audience to be seated until the academic recessional is complete.
Gracious God, we thank you for this convocation, for it has been good to be together again. We ask that you would bless all of the Aurora University family, both those of us who have gathered here this weekend and those around the world who could not be with us today. We thank you for all that you have in store for us in the 2022 to 23 academic year. We lift up our students to you that they may flourish during this new year. Bless us now that we may in turn be a blessing to our neighbors, community, and the world. We ask these things by your grace. Amen.